Empathy and where it is placed is the major component to making a story work,
It was beauty killed the beast.
both in the artist and in the audience. If the people making the film don't care for the characters, chances are we won't either. For generating any kind of feeling, more important than what the characters literally say and do, are how those characters are framed and presented. It's how we can feel bad for a cannibalistic serial killer and feel that getting hit by a bus is an appropriate punishment for a high schooler. For framing, one of the more obvious but fairly abstract to describe mechanics is that, due to the choices of the people behind it, the camera has feelings, which are then passed on to you, becoming the emotional context of the image. Examples include triumph, pity, and dread. Darth Vader, the Empire's fist, is big and tall and shrouded in darkness, whereas Luke, our underdog hero, is shorter. The framing puts us in Luke's shoes, as we both realize together how fucked he is. It also retroactively takes on different emotional meaning when we learn new information together with Luke, as now this is an image of a boy standing up to his father, who is a massive, imposing figure, like how you, child watching Star Wars, probably feel about your father. The image allows us to empathize with Luke and understand his situation more than just describing it ever could.
Okay, one last time. These are small, but the ones out there are far away.
Regarding perspective, this is the opinion the story has about itself and the characters in it, such as who is presented as our hero and who is presented as our villain. One of the best episodes of The Simpsons, Homer's Enemy, removes us from the context of the show and places us in the shoes of new plant worker Frank Grimes. Instead of the loving husband and father we know Homer to be despite his flaws, as presented in every other episode, a relatable everyman, Homer from Grimes' perspective is this idiot, who constantly achieves more than any normal person reasonably could, endlessly rewarded for doing nothing.
And the guy standing next to me is President Gerald Ford. This is when I was on tour with the Smashing Pumpkins. Here's a picture of me in outer space. Would you like to see my Grammy Award?
We know most of American Psycho did happen based on this moment here, the only time in the film we are outside of Patrick's view of himself. Maybe it didn't happen how he perceives it, but a version of it did happen. There are many movies like Rashomon, The Handmaiden, The Hero, Gone Girl, and Weapons that do this as part of their narrative within themselves, intentionally retelling overlapping events from different perspectives.
You like Rashomon?
That's not how I remember it.
Going back to Star Wars, a recurring source of parody I saw growing up was stormtroopers reacting to Luke and company destroying the Death Star as if it was Pearl Harbor or 9/11.
You know, honestly, I just think Palpatine knew all along. And he let it happen just to justify going to Hoth.
While this is meant as a joke, it pretty accurately predicts the kind of moral questions explored by Andor and the behavior of the individual rebel cells and how they are actually furthering the cause. These two things together, usually along with the editing, provide the emotional guideline for how we're supposed to think and feel about the characters and story, and who we empathize with. A lot of Obsession positions Bear as really small. He's regularly an incidental part of the world, just kind of there because he has to be as our main character. He's often standing like he's about to tell his parents he shit himself. The camera does not care for Bear. It is apathetic towards his existence. Moments early on where he's not getting brutally frame mogged include when he talks to Nikki at the bar, the first time she's in his bed, and the morning after her bad dream, specifically when they kiss. As the film develops and we learn more about Bear, we learn that he's a really bad guy. That's the important part, the withholding of vital information about the character. We're introduced to basically a blank slate with no reason to dislike him, but no reason to like him either. Early on, we see bad stuff happen to Bear, which doesn't ensure sympathy on a basic level, but at no point does Bear do anything that indicates to us that he's a good dude. His only scene before the cold water of Sandy's death is him and photorealistic Bart Simpson using this waitress as an agency-less prop and ignoring her feedback. Bear is defined by his negative space. This is a common trait of generic protagonists with little personality of their own, using the bad things they go through as a cheap trick to get us attached to them. But here, it's intentionally used to cover for Bear's status as a nice guy. The camera doesn't like Bear to the point of pettiness, and then later transitions into active dislike of him as his failures to find a way out of the situation he caused become punchlines.
So she's just fucked forever?
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as you live.
As long as I live? Or you could die. You could kill yourself. You know, I just...
There is one way out.
with his reaction to shocking moments and the situation escalating, leading to an increase in close-ups, with Bear's presence in frame growing larger and larger until the emotional climax of both the film and Bear's character, his final chance to own up to what he's done and his refusal to go through with it, where we zoom in on him, taking up the largest amount of space he ever has before zooming back out after he can't go through with it and Nikki breaks her one-wish willow. I do think this is one of the times we're locked into Bear's perspective, and that he's rationalizing this as genuine redemption. Of course it isn't, all his friends are already dead, and Nikki will never have agency again in her life. She will face the consequences of Bear's actions forever. The film becomes as much about mocking Bear's suffering as it is about connecting with Nikki's. Personally, I really like the amount of times Bear is reflected in stuff. It foreshadows the cabinet at the end, but also forcing him to look at himself and then reject any possible introspection.
For once, take some responsibility for yourself.
I wouldn't describe Bear's feelings towards Nikki as a crush or romantic in any way because he doesn't seem to know all that much about Nikki. New information about her inner world and life seem to confuse and frighten him, just how new information about him confuses and frightens us.
What's so bad about being with me?
Nikki is also defined by negative spaces, as we mostly see her in Bear's perspective, who sees Nikki as an idol or a goal to be obtained. Her depersonalization doesn't affect him because he didn't process her as a person to begin with. The mechanics of the One-Wish Willow are unique in that it's not as simple as Nikki being possessed or Nikki's brain chemistry being overwritten. There is a second, newly created being inhabiting her body, while the original presumably lives a life similar to the Sunken Place and Get Out. Despite technically being the monster of our horror movie and a violent murderer, even if we're scared of her, we're never directed to dislike Wish Nikki. It's important that she isn't presented as malicious in her actions or outright evil. As a newly created being that only exists to love Bear, she has no context for reality, and we see her try and figure it out in real time. As per Bear's wish, she doesn't understand anything. During the brief moments outside of Bear's perspective, we're given ample time to sit with how the situation is affecting both the suppressed inner Nikki and the outer personality. Both are treated as victims by the camera and story, with Wish Nikki especially flying under the radar as really tragic when you accept what she's saying at face value.
Like you don't love me as much as I do. You love me!
Even if Bear wasn't a rapist and a coward, the nature of the wish means there really is no way for him to respond mutually. Both Nikkis want love,
I'm not feeling love.
but are forced to settle for Bear. The treatment of the two Nikkis is important, as there is absolutely a version of the film that excludes this and tells it entirely from Bear's perspective, framing him as a sympathetic hero whose only crime was being in love, and is an innocent in this situation. Per an interview director Curry Barker gave with The Hollywood Reporter,
"When we were shopping this around, there were companies that told me they would give me $2 million if I rewrote the script to make Bear a hero. I was like, I'm not rewriting the script to make Bear a guy that does all the right things. It's so much more interesting that he doesn't do the right thing, and instead tries to make the relationship work, and he just keeps making bad decision after bad decision."
And bad decision after bad decision he does make, until he too has his agency taken away, the universe not even giving him the dignity of dying in center frame. He died as he lived, just kind of around. As an end note, some of the people I've discussed the movie with, including myself, were confused about the role of the cat. After its death highlighting the pills in Bear's bathroom, then why doesn't Bear react in an appropriate way when Nikki feeds it to him? I initially thought it was maybe a note from a producer to include something scary and fucked up earlier in the film as the situation is still spiraling, but it does make sense when you consider who Bear is. Bear doesn't care for the cat, he cares about the idea of the cat and what it offers him, like his interest in Nikki, and it shows how he's unable to appropriately care for someone that is his responsibility.
Sounds to me like you have a moral obligation to be there for her.
We see him dump the cat in the trash instead of disposing of it properly to go spend time with Nikki, and it's apparently still there 2 weeks later, allowing Nikki to get the body in the first place.
Wishes may cause unexpected behavior, violent tendencies, and self-mutilation. Do not use if you're experiencing insecurity or extreme obsession.